they had Ricky Nelson, and always he would put somebody like that and pair him with Duke, and it seemed to work.
Yeah.
Not that you wouldn't have been better.
No.
There's somebody here today who has probably made more movies with John Wayne than anybody other than Bruce Cabot. And his name is Ed Faulkner, who's here today. Ed, could you come up and join us? Okay, good to see you.
My delight.
Are you having fun?
Well, I'm here to tell you, Pilgrim.
Well, he drove in from Palm Springs, and I appreciate you coming in for this, and so does everybody here, because we're all John Wayne fans, and we know you've got some great stories about him that we haven't heard.
Well, one or two, perhaps.
Before we get to Duke, let's talk about the work that Ed did on television, because I think one of the most prolific directors on Have Gun Will Travel and Gunsmoke is the great Andy McLaglen, and you worked a lot with Andy.
I did over 100 TVs and films with Andrew. He's really the one. He was my mentor, I guess my first mentor. Richard Boone, I did 13 Have Gun Will Travels. He was a mentor, and certainly Duke was. And I just loved him. He was a wonderful, wonderful person. He was one of the finest men I believe I've ever met, really, honestly. I'll tell you a quick story. You mentioned Bruce Cabot. The first movie I did, McLINTOCK, which has become kind of a classic, Bruce was my father in that. Mm-hmm. And I worked with Bruce many, many, many times.
Well, McLINTOCK was actually one of Duke's first comedies, and it made a ton of money. That was very successful.
It was.
And Andy McLaglen directed that one as well.
Are you longing to see a movie with good, clean fun?
Well, that was the first picture with Duke, and I was delighted to be able to do the first film, McLINTOCK. That's turned into one of the classics. That was Maureen O'Hara, Stephanie Powers, Jerry Van Dyke,
Patrick
Wayne was in that.
Look, you fought him fair and square.
I don't think it was so fair and square.
Well, you want to take up where he left off?
If I did, you wouldn't find it so easy.
Pat and Stephanie and I were kind of a triumvirate there. We stuck together. Chill Wills, yeah, I did a number of pictures with Chilla. He's the wild turkey man. And Perry Lopez was the Indian boy. He was a fine actor. And we lost Perry not too long ago, as a matter of fact. Leo Gordon, he was the one that supposedly I was out with his daughter and just started the mud fight. And Duke came up to me and he pulled me aside. He said, "Well, have you ever worked with Hank?" I said, "No, I haven't." He said, "Give him a wide berth."
Now, we'll all calm down.
Boss, he's just a little excited.
I know. I'm going to use good judgment. I haven't lost my temper in 40 years. But, Pilgrim, you caused a lot of trouble this morning. Might have got somebody killed. And somebody ought to belt you in the mouth. But I won't. The hell I won't.
Yeah, I remember Andy called me on the phone and he said, "Eddie, guess what?" I said, "What?" He said, "I'm going to do a John Wayne movie." It was McLINTOCK. And he said, "I want you to come over and meet him." And of course, I came over to Paramount. They had the Bat Jack office there. And so I announced myself, and I was sitting there, and the doors opened, the double doors open. Here's Duke taking up both double doors, really. And Andy said, "Here's John Wayne." John Wayne says, "Hey," he's just great, grabbed me in his big hand of his, and he said, "I want you to meet your pappy," and that was Bruce Cabot. And that was fun. Oh, Hank Ward, boy, what a horseman he was. Mm-hmm. He was a rodeo. Well, he rode English as well as Western saddle, and was I consider one of the finest horsemen I've ever seen. Of course, they're none better than Ben Johnson.
What are you going to do?
What I'd have done 25 years ago. My name's CHISUM. Those animals are mine.
Oh, there must be some mistake here.
You made it.
Oh, well, I guess I have to kill you and take your horses too.
Another film that you did with John Wayne that Andy directed
Right.
was with Rock Hudson and John Wayne, and that seems like a strange pairing. The Undefeated was that film.
That's right, The Undefeated. I was Captain Anderson, I think, in that. And we got along fine. Rock was a very nice fella, good fella. And Duke, I tell you, I've forgotten what film. I think we were doing HELLFIGHTERS. And Duke came to me, he said, I have read a heck of a script. And he said, I'm trying to buy it. And there's a part, if I get it, I want you to play. It was this movie right here, True Grit.
Whoa.
And he wanted me for the Campbell part. But anyway.
You would have been better.
Well, I don't know about that.
My God, she reminds me of me.
Glen Campbell in his first big screen role.
A little earlier, I gave some thought to stealing a kiss from you, although you are very young. And you're unattractive to boot. But now I'm of a mind to give you 5 or 6 good licks with my belt.
Well, one would be as unpleasant as the other.
Hal Wallace made the movie, and Campbell was under contract.
Well, Hal Wallace always would put with Duke a young singer. You know, he produced Rio Bravo, too, where they had Ricky Nelson.
Right.
And always he would put somebody like that and pair him with Duke, and it seemed to work.
Yeah.
Not that you wouldn't have been better.
This has been one of the few peaceful scenes from the picture Rio Bravo, with John Wayne, Dean Martin, and Walter Brennan here, and a new girl, Angie Dickinson.
Tell him about Ricky Nelson.
Oh yeah, that's me. Come and see us.
You know, it was about 3 years, 2.5 or 3 years after we did McLINTOCK, it was announced that Duke was going to do a movie called The Green Berets. And so I called my agent and I said, what's going on with this? He said, Eddie, he said, I hate to tell you this, but he said, they're casting it from within. Patrick and Michael, who was the producer, we lost Michael, that was Duke's oldest son. And he said, they're not even letting agents in. And I said, oh boy. So I thought about it, and I sat down and I wrote a note. And I mailed it to Mary St. John, who was Duke's secretary for 30-some-odd years, a lovely lady. And I told her, I wrote a note to her, and I said, perhaps at the appropriate time you can hand this note to Duke. The note went something like this: Dear Duke, like yourself, I've worn a Stetson long enough. Perhaps a change of hats, maybe a beret. And so about a week or so later, my agent called me. He said, have you talked to Duke? I said, no, I haven't. He said, have you seen him? I said, no. He said, have you had any contact with him? I said, well, actually, I wrote him a letter. He said, that solves the problem. I said, what's that? He said, right now you're being couriered for one of the top roles in the Green Berets. So...
They're elite corps commandos, nameless and faceless in 100 newsreels and dispatches. Now you'll know them, and you'll know there are as many different kinds of courage as there are names. Colonel Mike Kirby, the pro.
We're doing a Green Berets, and we're at Fort Benning, Georgia, and we were filming on a Saturday. And we moved from the skeet, there was a scene, the skeet shooting range. And Duke said, come on, ride over with me. We were going near the golf course. He needed the greenery. So he and the photographer, director of photography, were about, 10 or 15 feet away from the fairway. And Duke was pointing out what he wanted here. And so I was down, being a golfer, I was down near the edge of the fairway and watched the Saturday morning golfers come through. And a fella came through shortly, and his ball landed near me, and he sees me there, and he said, "Good morning, Captain." I said, "Good morning." We're wearing our battle fatigues. And so I watched him, and he fiddled around, as golfers do, with his ball and the club. And he looked over the shoulder, and he saw Wayne up there. And he went back and addressed the club again. He did that several times, and finally, you could hear him thinking almost. So he passes me, and he walks up to Wayne, extends his hand, and he had his name on there, Kirby. And this man says, "Kirby, Colonel Kirby." He said, "I'm Colonel Jones, and I'll be damned if we haven't served together somewhere."